Mick Schumacher has been linked to a return to Formula One sooner rather than later, and this is one of the positives, with another 11th team being added to the grid. With 2 more slots open and so many drivers now seeking their chance to prove themselves within the inner circles of Cadillac, can Schumacher redeem himself after the difficult spell at Haas in 2022? If so, can he make a name for himself with a brand new fresh start with the American squad? Cadillac is actively searching for drivers who can bring the team into the competitive scene in Formula One, and it looks like we have a serious contender in Mick Schumacher. Although the young driver hasn't been the best version of himself, especially in 2022 when he and Kevin Magnussen were teammates, that is all in the past. A fresh start could be on the horizon after the latest statement from Mario Andretti, the director of Cadillac's F1 operations. It goes without saying that Mick is holding one of the biggest mysteries in his hand. Can he perform on the desired level to be considered a full-time Formula One driver, or is the pressure of having the Schumacher surname taking its toll on the young German driver? We must not forget that we're talking about a driver who has won Formula 3 and Formula 2 before he got here, something that not many rookies have done. However, things haven't gone as planned, and when he was paired up with Magnussen, his career seemed almost over. Ever since, the downfall of Mick Schumacher has been quite evident. The situations that transpired weren't very efficient for his career. He was the reserve driver for Mercedes, a role that he hoped would rejuvenate his career because of the power that Toto Wolff has over the paddock with the sister teams of Mercedes. But after the comments of James Vowles, and when the realistic opportunity arose for Mick to replace Nicholas Latifi, it was evident that there was no place for him in the sport right away, even though Wolff supported his comeback so fiercely. However, Wolff didn't offer him a seat at Mercedes before Antonelli matured in one of the so-called sister teams of Mercedes. It's not that Mick was the worst driver compared to Magnussen in their shared journey at Haas. Quite the contrary, he was outperforming him on many occasions. But the peer pressure from Günther Steiner to score points may have gotten to him, and he failed to deliver under these circumstances. Be that as it may, there's an opportunity for a fresh start for Mick with Cadillac, the American squad that is entering the sport with a lot of hope that they can rejuvenate the competitiveness and become a serious contender. Cadillac has been adamant that one of the seats will definitely go to an American driver, which is likely to be Colton Herta, who is yet to receive the super license. On the other hand, the opportunities for the second seat seem endless, even though they are tightening up bit by bit. Luckily for Mick, he's in the mix for this seat. There are so many variables that Cadillac will have to consider. Do they want a young duo of drivers that would practically solve their driver lineup issues for the long term? Or would they prefer to go with a veteran driver like Valtteri Bottas, Sergio Perez, or Daniel Ricciardo to ensure that they develop the car in the short term before someone younger steps in? If Cadillac decides to go in the first direction, Mick is definitely one of the options they will consider, because he has 2 attributes that would benefit the team a lot. He has F1 experience and he's young. On top of that, he has proven that he can score points in Formula One, even though he did it only twice, in Austria and Silverstone in 2022. Nevertheless, we know how Haas performed at that time under Steiner's leadership. Mario Andretti, the director of Cadillac, might have the answer for the driver's lineup of his team. When talking about it, he said, "Many drivers are being considered. We're keeping all options open. I think the goal from the beginning was to have at least one American driver. It definitely makes sense to put an experienced driver alongside an American driver, who will most likely be Colton Herta. But you have to keep your options open. You never know what will show up when the final decision is made. Suddenly, someone you never would have thought is available. You have to think positively. You have to think big." Of course, Mick is bringing a lot of sponsorship behind his name, and the popularity of his father is going to impact Cadillac extremely well. Everything is set in place for Mick to have a fresh start in his career, and if he can make a strong push toward this scenario becoming a reality, it will definitely be one of his last chances to prove that he still deserves to be a full-time Formula One driver. Cadillac is a serious candidate because, unlike Haas, their business philosophy is very different. They will produce their own engines from 2028 onwards, so the last thing they would want is to have a crash-prone driver who will cause tons of damage to their cars, something that Mick has done with Haas numerous times. This was listed as the primary reason why he was sacked from the team in the first place. If we remember correctly, Mick caused damages as high as $1 million in races like Monaco back in 2022, where the crash literally split the car into two pieces. Earlier that year, Schumacher spun under the safety car conditions in Imola, which aggravated Steiner to a greater extent. Because of this, Mick was doing nothing but causing damages to the car, further extending the bill for a team that was dead. Last in the Constructors' Championship, despite finishing P6 and P8 in Austria and Silverstone respectively, there was a lot of hope that Mick could bring the American squad back to the midfield. However, when the challenge to score points in the second half of the season was presented to him, he failed to accomplish it. Truth be told, it's not purely his fault because Magnussen failed to score points as well. If we look at how Schumacher went statistically against his teammate, it wasn't as bad as, for example, Nicholas Latifi or Zhou Guanyu. Obviously, Mick holds hidden talent that takes some time to develop, but there are circumstances that could go very well in his favor. The only thing he needs to do is hope for a little bit of faith from Cadillac and a boost from his financial and technical partners behind his back. On the other hand, Cadillac has some serious options in veteran drivers like Perez, Ricciardo, and Bottas. Sergio Perez is definitely the leading candidate if the team chooses to go in the direction of having a short-term veteran driver to develop their car because of his race-winning experience and his tenure with Red Bull. Yes, compared to the 2024 season, things have been extremely poor for Perez, and you would normally think it's a bad choice for any other team to have him on their squad. But a fresh beginning and potentially a leadership role, thanks to the finances he's going to bring along, might change Cadillac's perspective and motivation for Perez. When you're the designated number 2 driver, the prospects and hopes drop massively. And with this in mind, Perez will definitely be smart to wait and see how the market will line up in the coming months. Ricciardo and Bottas both have race-winning experience with teams that have won championships, especially Bottas, who helped his team win the Constructors' Championship from 2017 to 2021. Although Ricciardo has never won a championship with Red Bull, he did win 7 races for the team during a time when they were far from their peak competitiveness. He does possess charisma that is quite popular in the US, and Andretti holds a high opinion of the Australian driver. But we must not forget that Ricciardo himself said that he's done and out of the sport for a longer period of time. So the Cadillac project is definitely not suiting him, which is only better news for Mick Schumacher because that's one candidate less to compete with. Be that as it may, the situation is likely going to be very competitive because Cadillac is aiming to compete for race wins when they set up their own engine from 2028 onwards. Before that, they will try to accumulate as much data as possible. Now, whether we like Mick or not, he was extremely good from a technical point of view at Haas, and the feedback he provided was highly valued by the engineers. It's just the fact that Haas wasn't exactly a team you'd want to be part of at that time, in the midst of the storm that also saw the team principal at that time, Steiner, being sacked a year later. We can now ask whether it was smart to part ways with Schumacher without fully exploiting his potential. With all of this in mind, what do you think about Mick's quest to come back to the sport with Cadillac? And more importantly, do you think that he still has what it takes to be considered a Formula One driver given all of the challenges that have been presented to him? Let us know in the comments below. And if you're interested in the future of Max Verstappen at Red Bull after his father's statements, make sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen right now.